There is a carrot in my ear, and other noodle tales. Foreword. A noodle is a silly person. This book is about a family of noodles and the silly things they say and do. They are Mr. and Mrs. Brown, and Sam and Jane, and Grandpa. The Browns take the day off. It was a hot day, so Mr. Brown took his family to the swimming pool. Sam and Jane jumped right in. They raced all the way to the other end of the pool. Then they raced back. Grandpa jumped in. Then he jumped up and down. Each time he came down, he called out, "Brrr!" Mr. Brown bounced up and down on the diving board. Mrs. Brown sat in the sun and turned bright red. "It is very nice here today," said Jane. "It'll be even nicer on Tuesday," said the man with the broom. "Why?" asked Sam. "Why?" asked Grandpa. "Why?" asked Mr. Brown. "Why?" asked Mrs. Brown. "On Tuesday," said the man with the broom, "there will be water in the pool." Sam and Jane go camping. Sam and Jane were camping out. When it got dark, they made a big fire and told stories. "This is a story about Bill, the ghost dog," said Jane. "It is a very scary story." "I hope so," said Sam. "Once upon a time," said Jane, "there was a big white dog named Bill. Bill had a very mean owner. He wouldn't feed Bill or pet him or anything. Then one night—" Suddenly Jane stopped. She heard a strange sound. "Mmm, mmm, mmm." It was getting louder and louder. "Ouch!" cried Sam. "Something bit me!" "Ouch!" yelled Jane. "Something bit me too!" "It's a bunch of mosquitoes!" yelled Sam. They jumped up and down and ran around and waved their arms. But the mosquitoes would not go away. "Let's put out the fire," whispered Sam. "They'll never find us in the dark." They put out the fire and sat down on a rock. A mosquito flew by, then disappeared. It was as quiet as a graveyard. "They are gone," whispered Jane. "I think so," whispered Sam. Then some fireflies flew by. "Oh no!" Sam groaned. "They are back. And now they are looking for us with flashlights." Mr. Brown washes his underwear. On Saturday, Mr. Brown washed his dirty clothes. He washed his socks, his shirts, and his underwear. Then he hung them up to dry in the backyard. He hung the underwear in the apple tree. When the wind blew, the underwear waved its arms and kicked its legs. It looked like a dancing ghost. After supper that night, Mrs. Brown looked out the window. "There is a man in the apple tree," she told Mr. Brown. "Don't worry," he said. "I'll scare him away." Mr. Brown went into the yard. He called out, "Who are you? What do you want?" Nobody answered. He called out again, "Who are you? What do you want?" Again, nobody answered. Mr. Brown got angry. "You are very rude not to answer me," he shouted. But still there was no answer. So Mr. Brown picked a ripe tomato, and he threw it at the man in the tree. Then he threw another and another and another. "That'll show you," he shouted. The next morning he went outside to get his clothes. When he got to the apple tree, he was very surprised. His underwear was covered with squashed tomatoes, and it was dripping tomato juice. "I am really lucky I wasn't wearing that underwear," Mr. Brown said to himself. Jane grows a carrot. Jane and Sam were walking home from school. "I have a secret to tell you," said Jane. "I won't tell anybody," said Sam. "There is a carrot in my ear," said Jane. "It has been growing there all week." "That is very strange," said Sam. "How did that happen?" "I don't know," said Jane. "I planted radishes." Grandpa buys a pumpkin egg. After breakfast, Grandpa took a long walk. In front of the grocer's store, he saw a big pile of pumpkins. "What are those big round things?" he asked the grocer. "Don't you know?" the grocer asked him. "I don't think so," said Grandpa. The grocer smiled. "They are horse eggs," he said. "You put one in a sunny place and sit on it for a day and a night, and it'll hatch a baby horse." "I bet Sam would like one," Grandpa thought. "Okay," he said. "Give me the biggest one." When Grandpa got home, he put the pumpkin in the backyard. Then he went into the kitchen and got a chicken leg, a hard-boiled egg, some jelly beans, and some lemonade. "Now I won't get hungry," he said to himself. Then he sat on the pumpkin and he waited. He sat all that day, and he sat all that night. By the next morning, he was so tired he fell asleep and fell off the pumpkin. When that happened, the pumpkin started rolling down the hill. It rolled and it rolled until it crashed into a bush. A rabbit was sitting inside the bush. When the pumpkin rolled in, the rabbit jumped out and started running. Grandpa saw the rabbit, and he got very excited. "Come back, little horse," he called. "Come back." But the rabbit kept running. Grandpa went to see the grocer again. "I want my money back," he said. "Why?" asked the grocer. "Well," said Grandpa, "the egg hatched all right, but the baby horse ran away." "It is time to go to sleep." "It is 10 o'clock," Mrs. Brown called out. "Time to go to sleep." "I am taking my ruler to bed," said Sam. "I want to know how long I sleep." "I am taking my bicycle to bed," said Jane. "I am tired of walking in my sleep." "I am taking my running shoes to bed," said Mr. Brown. "Last night I dreamed a bear was chasing me, and I don't want him to catch me." "I am taking my mirror to bed," said Grandpa. "I want to see how I look when I'm asleep." Then Mr. Brown said to Mrs. Brown, "Put the light out and come to bed." So Mrs. Brown put the light out and came to bed, and they all went to sleep.